The ESV Preaching Bible has been kind of a tough subject. When they came out with the first Preaching Bible, it had a lot of great features. It was just a single column, great font size, excellent reading Bible. It just wasn't a preaching Bible, in my opinion. Excellent Bible, just misnamed. Now they've come out with the new Preaching Bible, verse by verse. Stay tuned, see how they compare. In this video, I'm going to be showing the full Preaching Bible, verse by verse. It'll be a full review and how it compares to the original Preaching Bible. Now, there'll be another video coming out how the new Preaching Bible compares against some legends, the Legacy, the Lego, and the my favorite, the 08 verse by verse. These are not all verse by verse editions, but they are all single columns, and they are legendary, and people love to preach from them, and they are very popular rebind candidates, but that will be in another video. This video will simply be comparing the two preaching Bibles that we currently have from Crossway. I'll post a link to the comparison video in the description below if you're interested to see how it stacks up against other Crossway legends. Now, when we compare these two editions, we see a stark difference in price. The new verse by verse edition is retailed for $50 more than the original Preaching Bible. Now, I do think that that is appropriate to raise your price for a higher level of quality. Spoiler alert, but I still think $250 retail is a little high on the new verse by verse, and I thought $200 retail was a little high on the non-verse by verse edition. Now, these two editions are very similar with regard to the text. The text on the verse by verse is almost a 10. It says 9.75 point font, and the original is a 10-point font. So when comparing the covers of these two editions, you can tell that Crossway's now had a little more experience in China with these goatskins, and this edition is a much higher grade of goatskin. It feels much better, this exterior goatskin. As far as the cover goes, the outer cover quality leather is kind of the big story here. It's a much better leather, but I will say that the liner on the original Preaching Bible is a little bit nicer than the liner on the new one. Now, they're both a calfskin, but the original Preaching Bible had a little bit of a stiffer liner, which it really kind of needs. The new one is extremely floppy, and that might or might not make much of a difference to you while you're preaching, but as far as the longevity of the Bible, a floppy liner doesn't hold up really well over time. The gildings on the two Bibles are about the same, but the art gilt looks a little bit richer in the new verse by verse. The original Preaching Bible, it was darker, but it was kind of faint, and I made a mention of that in the review. They actually did a lot better on the art gilt for the new edition. All right, on top I have the new verse by verse edition, and on bottom I have the original Preaching Bible that's a paragraph format. Now, here in 1 Chronicles, they're not the exact same section, but it's pretty close. You can definitely see how the navigation of a verse by verse is helpful for the preacher. Now, you might or might not be able to tell through the camera footage, but this verse by verse, I don't know what the GSM paper is, but I would be willing to bet that it's lower. I believe in the original Preaching Bible it was 36. This is probably a little less, because a verse by verse is typically going to be a bigger edition, but it ends up being smaller, which means they used thinner paper. You're going to have a little more ghosting that I've noticed, just a little bit more ghosting in the new verse by verse edition, but it's still not bad. And I would much rather trade off a little bit of ghosting for this much easier preaching format. Now, your wide margin is the same size, very useful if you make notes in the outer margin. Plus, you actually end up with more marginal room in the gutter. You can see in the original preaching edition, the text really ran into the gutter a lot more than on this new verse by verse edition. All of these changes in this text layout really appeal to a preacher or a public speaker because it helps you keep the text in focus or find your place easily when you're going back to the text. But you can see here the difference in text size is really imperceptible. This one states that it's a 9.75 and the original is a 10. They just look the same to me. Now let's set aside the old edition and really kind of focus on what we know about the new one. It does have 2 ribbons that are garbage for $250 retail. What is that? This is an edge-lined edition. You have art gilt, nice gilding, terrible ribbons. Let's take a look at the publication page here. This shows it as a 2021 printing, and it's 2020. Now, these editions aren't going to be released until January of next year, but it's just kind of crazy to see 2021 here, and I feel like I'm in the future. So, of course, at the top it says ESV Bible, Preaching Bible, Verse by Verse Edition, 2016 text. Now, these are some things that I think we could probably take out of the Preaching Bible. The contents page, the preface. Why are these in here? A preacher knows what they're doing with this. This is a tool. This is like selling Snap-on tools to professionals and telling them how to use it. Also, there aren't any legacy pages in the front, which that's smart. There's no need for that. There's a presentation page, and that's it. Good. Not including things that make no sense to include. That's the right thing to do. Now, here we are at the text, and as you can see when I was showing the comparison, this has a verse-by-verse layout, single column, good margins in the gutter, a great margin on the outer margin. You have marginal rim over top and on the bottom. You have good spacing. Your numbers, thank you Crossway. Your verse numbers are the same size as your text. Good. You also have times where you have a paragraph indentation there where you see that little symbol. Now there are no references in this edition, and there shouldn't be. There's room for notes. That is the whole purpose. There's room for notes for a preacher where he can draw. There's plenty of space between the text so a preacher can draw a line and it not overshadow the next text line, or circle a word and it not really encroach on the other words around it. So there's a lot of benefit to spreading this text out. The paper feels great and feels like it's really durable, even though it's a little thinner. Crossway did a lot right with this. This is what they should have originally called the Preaching Bible. This is the Preaching Bible. Yeah, I just can't get over how this liner is it's just really flimsy. It feels nice. I mean, it feels luxurious. The interior gilt line looks nice. The corner work looks okay, but it's not glued down because you can feel how this edge gets pulled up. But that's the same as it was in the original Preaching Bible, so that hasn't really changed. Now, I've been using this Bible for about a week, and I've been trying to train this Yapp down, and it just does not want to stay. And I think that's due to that liner I was talking about. The liner's just really thin. It doesn't have a lot of memory to it. So you can tell with Bibles that have a thicker liner, they'll retain a lot of memory. This one just doesn't seem to do that. So I don't know if it's going to have a wavy cover or if you'll be able to train it down over time. And the more I use it, the more I like it. I really do like it. I'd love to have a version of this that's red letter. So there's a lot of pros with this edition. You have the new improved cover leather, which is definitely much better than the original. And you have the text layout. The paper looks really good. The readability is great. I love that there aren't any references. There's no need in having references in a preaching Bible. But it gets confusing when I kind of start talking about the things that they could do better. The things they could do better is not include these maps. Why are maps in here? They're maps on glossy cardstock, of course. They've got to be on glossy cardstock. But why are they in here? What, are you going to hold up your map while you're preaching? Are you going to reference to your map? There's no sense in having a map in a preaching edition. Why is there a concordance here? Why is there a table of weights and measures? All of this whole section could be lined paper or an index or something that could be usable for the preacher. That I don't get. Why is that here? I don't know. Maybe a file folder where you can put an interchangeable, notepad or something in here. I mean, there's lots of options here, but there's no need for a table of weights and measures, a concordance, or maps in these editions. Why are they here? Also, when you're paying $250, why are there only 2 garbage ribbons in this Bible? Why not more ribbons? If a preacher's going to reference different texts, He can have really quick access with different ribbons. He can have them already staged and ready to turn to. But having only 2 ribbons, that's more of a reading Bible. That's more of a Old Testament, New Testament kind of setup. A preaching Bible needs to have tools. It just doesn't make sense. It's getting better, but there's still a lot that could be better about this edition. This is a great Bible. This really is. And I believe they're going to sell a lot of these verse-by-verse preaching Bibles because it's the best thing they've produced since going to China. It's the best thing. I did say in my Creeds and Confessions review that it was the best one I had seen since the move to China. Well, the new verse-by-verse preaching Bible has kind of taken that mantle, and that still doesn't mean it can't be improved. So, in my opinion, the text is amazing. Leave it alone. I love it. Love the verse-by-verse. The paper quality is great. The art gilding, the gilding's good. The cover's pretty good. Upgrade the liner, maybe to a stiffer liner because it is a bigger Bible. Need to have a better liner. The liner's the life of the Bible. Last things, more and better ribbons. And please, ditch the concordance and the maps in the back. Put lined paper or matte cardstock where people can do their own thing in that area. Cambridge does lined paper. Allen, Schuyler, even Holman in their CSBs, they do lined paper. It's popular and it's useful. It's an actual useful thing. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I know that I have a lot of mixed emotions. I'm so happy with how this Bible turned out. It looks amazing. It feels amazing. The text is amazing. It really is. But there are just a few choices on behalf of Crossway that just baffle my brain. But we're getting there. The ship's turning. Takes a long time to turn a big ship with a small rudder, but it turns. We're going to get there. Also, remember to check the description below. I'm making another video where I compare this amazing verse-by-verse edition, even with its weird quirks, with the Lego verse-by-verse and the Heirloom Legacy Amazing Bible, and my baby, the 08 verse-by-verse single-column reference. So, stay tuned for that. And if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload new videos. And as always, take care and God bless.